What's going on, guys? Your average consumer. And it's Apple Day. So you know there were a ton of announcements, lots of new products, lots of cool things. So let's talk about it. So the first thing we gotta talk about is iPhone 14 Pro. So I was hyped, I saw the Pro, I was very excited. We saw a lot of rumors with like multiple camera punch-outs, wasn't crazy about that. I like what we are seeing now. I think what they're calling it around the internet is like the pill, but what's nice though is that it doesn't just sit there and take up this portion of your screen. Apple actually found a way to make it interactive. What Apple has done here is added some software features to kind of enhance the experience and not just make it an eyesore, so now you can interact with it depending on what you're doing. And you're gonna actually see that pill expand with what you're doing. And you can get some relevant information even if you're in another app. No matter what you're doing, you're still going to be able to keep an eye on some activities that you've been doing previously. You can actually press down on that section and get an expanded version of it, so you can interact with the content that's going to be there. The only problem here is that a lot of people might start pressing their cameras a lot more. You might get those fingerprint smudges over your camera. So when you're going to take a selfie, you might need to wipe off your screen first. So we'll have to see how bad that is. Oh, the touch bar. How you can interact with it. I see you, Jay. Yeah, so we got like a little touch bar on the iPhone. I also think it's kind of cool how the Face It icon shows up with the punch out. I feel like this is going to make a really smooth experience when operating the phone. I'm excited for it. Like even connecting the AirPods has like its own little symbol. It's gonna be dope. So that's part of the iPhone 14 Pro's new design, but they've also got some new colors, or one new color. So there's Deep Black, which is a new name. We've also got Silver Gold and Deep Purple. Apple, come on. Why'd you get ready to bloom? Now of course we're going to see some of the improvements that we would expect. This thing is going to be packing the A16 Bionic processor. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with the specs. This thing is probably going to be one of the most impressive chips that we'll see for the whole year now. We'll also be seeing improvements with the cameras. So we've got some new camera sensors, as well as a new 48 megapixel wide-angle camera, which is surprising. Apple doesn't usually do the huge megapixel thing, but they're doing it here. And Apple also introduced their quad-pixel sensor, which is 65% larger than last year. And you know what that means, you guys. We are going to see better low-light performance. I'm personally extremely excited for that. You know, we're going to test it out in the real world with the real day in the life. So if you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe now, so you can see what it's like to actually own the phone and use it in the real world. They also introduced this new video mode, and this is also on the iPhone 14, the base models, where now there's like an action mode. So if you're, I don't know, capturing content of someone doing action stuff, maybe skateboarding, jogging, whatever it may be, so it should be a lot smoother. The standard video had really good stabilization on the iPhone for like a long time, but this is if you need like that extra step for action shots. Now the last thing I'll mention about the cameras is I'm excited for the ultra wide. So it's a 12 megapixel shooter, but the ultra wide is supposed to have 3 times better low light performance, which has always been the ultra wide weak point for most phones. So I'm genuinely interested in seeing how that performs. It's something I've been waiting on. There's also the 48 megapixel raw photos too. The cinematic mode has 4K 30 now. And you also have the ProRes. Okay. No more camera talk. We're done. We're done now. Something I didn't mention yet is that the iPhone 14 Pro is going to now have an always-on display. Now the always-on display actually looks pretty cool, because it's not going to be an all-black screen. It's actually going to have a little bit of color to it. We should be able to see some information when you're not actively using the phone. So notifications coming in, different alerts that you might get, you'll be able to see it just by glancing over at your phone. Something we've seen on other phones for a long time, and even on the Apple Watch. But now it's finally coming over to the iPhone 14 Pro. Now it's going to be interesting to see what kind of impact it has on battery life. Now, because the Pro models have the Pro Motion display, it's going to I don't want to get nerdy here, but it's going to slow the phone screen down quite a bit. And it's also going to dim it. Got the old screen. Shouldn't be too bad. But we'll do some testing and figure it out. Now something else with that display is that now it is quite a bit brighter. So the peak HDR brightness is 1600 nits, which is really bright. But I believe the peak outdoor brightness is 2000 nits. So if you're outside, you will not need to worry about seeing what's on your display. 2000 nits is absolutely insane. So I'm really curious, because I'm about to have that thing on all the time. I get 4 minutes of battery life. I feel like Apple's catering a lot to outdoor activities. After trying to tell me to get in shape, I need to go out. I'm going to go outside now. I don't want to go outside, there's bugs. Now something that the iPhone 14 Pro models, as well as the base models have or don't have, are going to be a SIM tray. Now I know that's going to be a little bit touchy for a lot of people. Some people like to take their phones and travel them like internationally, pop in a SIM card. I don't know if eSIMs are an option everywhere, but I saw some people complaining already. I'm personally happy about it. I'm happy about it because I hate the process of like popping out the SIM, throwing it in there, moving it along to the new device. Aren't we always looking for the SIM ejector tool? It's a pain, so I'm glad to see it gone. But we are going to see what kind of impacts it has on international travel. So there are a lot of cool things coming to all 4 of the models of the new iPhones. I'm excited. I really like the idea of that dynamic island. But my only concern is how much it impacts the viewing experience for just like everyday content. Based on what we saw with the videos earlier, with our hands on, shouldn't be an issue. Unless you really want to maximize the screen. At that point it'll be pretty visible. Now those weren't the only things that Apple announced. They also announced their new Apple Watch Series 8, Apple Watch SE, and the Apple Watch Ultra. Like there is a completely new category to the Apple Watch, which I'm personally really excited about. So with the Series 8, we got some standard upgrades. Nothing too crazy. The design is very much the same as the Series 7 over here. But with the Series 8, there are a couple of new features. So now there's gonna be a temperature sensor, which can track your temperature at night. I think it attracts it as much as like every 5 seconds, while you're sleeping now. Why this is useful? It's actually going to be pretty useful. This thing is going to definitely help out, because it's going to help you track your ovulation. Now this thing also has the crash detection that we talked about earlier. So let's say you don't even have your phone. If your watch can sense an impact from the front side of your car, it also uses the mics to hear crash sounds. It uses all of that to identify whether or not you've been in an accident. And then it can also call emergency services, as well as your emergency contacts. It's going to also feature that same 18 hours of battery life. And if you go into this new low power mode, you're going to be able to get 36 hours, basically doubling it. But you do lose a couple of features. But for the most part, all the important things are going to still be there. So Apple Watch Series 8, not a huge upgrade compared to the Series 7. So don't need to worry too much if you already have a Series 7. But you might worry if you want that Apple Watch Ultra. So this is a completely new category made with the outdoors in mind. Well, it appears all the leaks and rumors were true. Apple finally killed the display notch with the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max. In its place is a single pill-shaped display cut out. The iPhone 14 Pro Max feels less like another iterative upgrade and more like a true leap forward for Apple's flagship. You get a powerful new 48 megapixels camera, a replacement for the notch that's actually smart, and an always-on display that can help make your life easier while saving battery life. The regular iPhone 14 Pro looks great too, but the iPhone 14 Pro Max is your best bet if you prefer a larger display and longer battery life. Stay tuned for our full-rated iPhone 14 Pro Max review. Given many of the best Android phones make use of single punch-hole camera cutouts, you might think a pill shape would look dumb. But there's enhanced functionality here in the form of the dynamic island. That's the fancy name Apple has given the cutout that can seemingly expand, via software and graphics, to communicate a range of alerts, from confirming AirPods are connecting correctly to showing the phone has started charging, and expanding to indicate certain background activity. It becomes an island for when music is playing. As for the display itself, the sizes remain at 6.1 inches, and 6.7 inches for the iPhone 14 Pro, and iPhone 14 Pro Max respectively. But not only are the bezels slimmer, a new LTPO panel is used to enable a refresh rate to scale down from 120 Hz to 1 Hz. By doing this, battery life can be saved even when enabling the new always-on display, which can show notifications and information even when the phone is locked, all without raising the iPhone or tapping the display. And for people who like watching things like movies on their iPhones, the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max can now hit 1600 nits of brightness, with a peak brightness of 2000 nits for outdoor use. That's brighter than the mighty Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. The rest of the design for the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max is broadly similar to the iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max. The edges remain flat and are made of stainless steel as before. iPhone 14 Pro cameras. As predicted by the rumors, the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max both got new 48-megapixel main cameras. At a base level, these will enable higher resolution photos with more detail and better low-light photography. But there's more to this than a simple specs boost. With a quad-pixel sensor, the new main camera combines 4 pixels into one large quad-pixel equivalent to 2.44 micrometers, and allows for the sensor to adapt to the photo being captured. So while photos will, by default, be resolved a manageable 12 megapixels, there's scope to capture more detail and let in a lot more light. To really hammer home the Pro element of the new Pro iPhone, the Pro RAW mode can now capture uncompressed 48 megapixels photos to enable a lot more editing potential. And for video fans, the 48 megapixels camera allows for 4K at 30 frames per second in cinematic mode. Sadly, number 8K video capture on offer here. Second generation sensor shift optical image stabilization in the smart processing of the A16 Bionic chip's neural engine. More on that later. Provides a new action mode for video stabilization when moving at speed across difficult terrain. The 48 megapixels camera also enables a new 2x zoom mode by using the middle 12 megapixels of the main sensor for full resolution photos and 4K videos with no digital zoom. While the ultra-wide and telephoto cameras stick at 12 megapixels, they have been improved. The telephoto camera still hits 3x optical zoom, but comes with a 6x optical zoom range. And the ultra-wide camera is new, making use of 1.4 micrometers pixels for sharper images and an improved macro mode. The new 12 megapixels true-depth front-facing camera comes with an f1.9 aperture that enables better low-light performance for photos and video, and also gets autofocus for the first time. This should allow for better low-light photo capture, and for improved shots of groups from further away. On the computational photography side, Apple has the new Photonic Engine that promises better mid to low light performance across all 3 cameras. A 2x boost to the main camera, 3x on the ultrawide and 2x on the telephoto camera, as well as a 2x improvement on the front-facing camera. Building on Apple's Deep Fusion AI tech, the Photonic Engine will apparently process more detail in photos, while preserving subtle textures, providing better color, and maintaining more information in a photo. On top of all this, a new, adaptive True Tone flash makes use of 9 LEDs to better adapt to lighting conditions and further boost low-light photography. iPhone 14 Pro chipset and battery life. The iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max both get the new A16 Bionic chip. Building upon the already fast A15 Bionic, the 6-core CPU is up to 40% faster than the competition. Think Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Yet being built on a 4nm process and sporting 16 billion transistors, the chip's 2 high-performance cores consume 20% less power than before. The 5-core GPU offers 50% more bandwidth, which should deliver more gaming performance, and slicker graphically intensive apps. And a display engine has been added into the mix to take care of the dynamic island. But iPhones have never lacked in performance, so the interesting thing here is the neural engine can now handle 17 trillion operations per second and 4 trillion operations per photo. Working in tandem with the image signal processor, it should mean the iPhone 14 Pro's computational photography skills end up being very impressive. Apple revealed no battery sizes but promised the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max will deliver all-day battery life. We'll have to see about that in our testing. Fast charging is on offer with a 20W adapter filling up the battery to 50% in around 30 minutes. There was no mention of RAM, either capacity or type, but expect the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max to be blazingly fast. Storage will come in 128GB, 256GB, 512GB and 1TB options. iPhone 14 Pro Outlook. What may have seemed like incremental upgrade at a quick glance, the changes here could all add up to make for a substantial iPhone update, and a contender for our best phones list. The dynamic island might sound a bit odd, but it could set the standard for how display cutouts and notches can be used as a feature rather than a necessary inconvenience. And with third-party support, the new alert feature could be used for all matter of smart purposes. Then there's the 48 megapixels camera. While Android phones are no stranger to high megapixel sensors, the use of Apple's computational photography at a hardware and software level could really set a new standard for the best camera phones. Of course, we'll need to test the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max for ourselves before drawing any conclusions. What do you guys think? What is it your absolute favorite? Let me know with a comment down below, and I'll catch you guys with a lot more coverage of all of the new Apple products in the next few days. So then it's your average consumer. Take care, and goodbye.